first edition of Fast Forward. So if you haven't yet had a chance to read the report, this is a new monthly publication we just launched covering a must-know cross-industry topic. So this time we explore how AI-powered agents acting on consumers' behalf are reshaping commerce across the board, from recommendations to purchase and beyond. And it's actually the first in a three-part series centered around augmented lifestyles and the ways in which AI and technology are supercharging the consumer experience. So lots of content to get through, and don't forget, you can always go back and read the report as well if you want to dive into any of this in greater detail. And really, in some ways, the entire report can actually be summed up with this sentence. The rules of retail are changing as AI evolves from assistant to agent. But don't hit the leave call button because there's still lots more to unpack. That doesn't really fully sum it up. What's happening? What's changing? You've probably noticed that the customer journey is being reimagined. According to Bain, 80% of consumers or 80% of search users now rely on AI summaries at least 40% of the time. So the ways in which consumers discover and learn about new products is changing. And look, this isn't exactly new news. We've previously observed how product discovery shifted towards social media, TikTok, Instagram. Now it's moving to ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google Gemini. And this growing familiarity with AI search and recommendations is really paving the way for AI agents that can browse, negotiate, and check out on shoppers' behalf. And this really fundamentally changes who controls the consumer relationship and shifts the sort of landscape away from traditional marketing and into a new space where this visibility to AI agents is going to be as important as things like SEO. And for the consumer, AI agents could potentially offer unparalleled convenience, but there's also the potential for new kinds of dependencies, depending on these agents for things and in new ways. And we're sort of already starting to see this expectation that agents work with consumers' best interests at heart and not brands' best interests. Now, I've said the phrase AI consumer agent already quite a few times, and the phrase AI agent is also kind of constantly doing the rounds amongst tech companies and in the kind of broader media. So before we dive into why it's happening, let's make sure we're all on the same page slide when it comes to what an AI agent actually is. So for the purposes of this report, we defined an AI consumer agent as something that can take action and make decisions independently to achieve predetermined goals. In retail, more specifically, that will result in AI agents that can act as personal shoppers on behalf of consumers. So, for example, autonomously curating product selections, conducting purchases, even maybe handling customer service inquiries. So let's let's explore, what is underpinning this rise. First off, the very human quest for convenience and relevance. So as a client, you will know that all of our trends are rooted in basic human needs. And those two, convenience and relevance, are, particularly important when it comes to shopping and commerce. Companies and startups have been coming up with tech-led, convenience-focused retail solutions for, decades. If you have a long memory and, don't mind showing your age, you might remember Moby Mart. This was a supermarket that was meant to come to you. Quick refresher if you don't remember or if you're unfamiliar with it. So it basically is a bit Trem bingo, this one, if I'm honest. It was an autonomous vehicle designed to be completely self-sufficient, relied on software that tracked its inventory and then alerted the kind of startup when it needed to be restocked. It had an electric engine, it had solar panels, check with all the buzzwords there. This launched they first announced the prototype in around 2017. Was it too good to be true? Yes, it never materialized. Or perhaps you remember when Sephora installed a digital mirror at their flagship store in Madrid, promised personalized recommendations using AI. So it could detect data about the shopper that was looking into it, things like gender, age, their sort of style and clothing. And then it used that data to recommend makeup, skincare, and fragrance, also took real-time information into account. Of course, there's also Amazon's Just Walk Out tech. This did actually materialize, but maybe it wasn't the success story that Amazon promised. Sainsbury's, which were Just Walk Out's first international customer, I believe, they just pulled the plug on their Just Walk Out store in London. And look, I probably could talk for the next 45 minutes about, tech solutions that didn't make it. Why might AI agents be different? Well, essentially, they can be integrated into existing digital habits. So they require much more limited behavior change. Hopefully, they are smarter and more intelligent. And in the coming month, this combination of improved AI capabilities, deeper platform integration, interconnected ecosystems could really result in an agent-mediated shopping experience that actually does deliver, unlike those ones we just looked at. AI agents might be big tech's latest obsession, but there is also sort of something about how it's changing and redefining consumer brands' relationships. NVIDIA, OpenAI, ByteDance, and others are all kind of really racing to be the intermediary between consumers and commerce. And, the sector is starting to pick up steam on the sales front. AI and AI agents drove $14.1 billion US in online sales globally on Black Friday in 2024. Consumers seem to be keen. According to research from Capgemini published at the start of this year, 71% of global consumers would like to see AI integrated into their shopping actions. That's up from 56% in 2023. And more interestingly, perhaps, 68% say they have purchased products recommended by AI tools like ChatGPT. That's up from 52%. So we see this momentum building. And as AI agents evolve from something that is just there for assistance to do more, to sort of also offer purchase as well, traditional brand touch points like mobile apps, for example, will really decline. And it's going to change the way that brands collect data about consumers as well. So we're going to move from, direct interactions on a website, on a mobile app, to kind of AI mediated conversations. So really the kind of overarching picture here as well is that AI agents are going to become these new gatekeepers of consumer attention. And look, we talked a little bit about convenience, relevance. Another basic need when it comes to commerce interactions is simplicity. Many consumers are just overwhelmed by the number of options available to them. When you think about planning a holiday using digital tools, I mean, the thought is almost so overwhelming that it doesn't seem like it's worth enjoying the holiday. Of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but sifting through reviews, trying to work out if something is sponsored content, researching the best price, it's quite a lot. Many consumers feel a little bit like Elmo. And as a result, many people, often shop at a narrow range of retailers. They seek the best choice without too much mental effort. AI agents could really solve this by searching across the entire retail landscape and could evaluate on a more objective criteria. They kind of take the emotion out of the decision. So they could evaluate on things like price, reliability, quality. What does this result in? Well, this creates a much more flattened, much more transparent retail landscape based on product merit rather than marketing or influence. Brand loyalty has kind of already taken a bit of a beating over the last few years, post-pandemic, during the cost of living crisis, and so on. Expect, AI agents to kind of put another dent in that in the coming months. And the question here to ask and to really think about is, what happens when customers can very easily discover options that outperform yours, that are the best, when they don't restrict themselves to such a narrow range of retailers because they are overwhelmed by everything that is available to them, and there is something that is able to do all of that sifting and sorting on their behalf. Of course, I think it's important to acknowledge that consumer adoption is probably going to vary across product categories. Commodities and maybe more functional goods like toilet paper or light bulbs, these are probably like a more logical starting point. There's less emotional attachment when you buy these things. They are probably something that you need at fairly regular intervals. Whereas emotional purchases or luxury purchases, think jewelry, for example, will probably remain human guided, or maybe even something that people prefer to visit a store for, because if they're buying their first Chanel handbag, going into the store is part of the experience as well. Because, of course, shopping in many ways will still remain a social activity. So we expect, that this consumer adoption will vary across different product categories, kind of depending on that emotional attachment. And interestingly enough, there are still kind of barriers to outsourcing to AI agents. Yes, consumers want convenience. Yes, they want simplicity. But the other basic need that they also like to serve is control, especially when it comes to finalizing the purchase selection or even making the transaction. So research from Cognizant from the start of this year found that 75% of AI adopters don't trust AI to reorder or pay for high value purchases without their direct authorization or approval. So this is a group that have already used AI tools, are comfortable and familiar with them. They still, at this point, are maybe kind of slightly hesitating around AI agents. So, of course, tech companies and brands as well will need to work to gain trust. That means, being very transparent about processes, about what happens with data, about what happens if something goes wrong, about limitations, and so on. We all remember the example from last year where there was an airline chatbot that gave bad advice about, I think it was rebooking or refunding a flight. And then the brand had to kind of honor what it offered. So brands will also need to safeguard against those kinds of things. And it's very interesting when you think about kind of digital transformation. Often there is a period of skepticism or apprehension. Think about something like online banking, for example. That was something that people were initially wary of. People were concerned about fraud and all sorts of issues. But today, digital wallets are kind of the norm. You probably don't need me to tell you, consumer acceptance typically follows this kind of pattern: apprehension, experimentation, adoption. Many consumers are still at the apprehension stage when it comes to AI consumer agents, but I think we can all guess the direction of travel. So we've covered the drivers that we feature in the report. Let's explore some of the innovations that are also included, some of the kind of real world case studies. I'm not actually going to go through all of them now, just for timing purposes. But do check out like the report for the others that I don't have time to share. So these are the innovations that are in the report. Let's start on the left in the UK, where Marks and Spencer's introduced an AI-powered wine finder, excuse me, that helps shoppers select select a bottle based on their taste. So they developed it with a company called Preferably. It asks questions about preferences before providing a selection. We've talked a couple of times today already about basic human needs. And this is, a great example of, just serving consumers' need for relevance. Interestingly, search queries that are related to needs, e.g., the best charger for travel, actually already outnumber those for specific brands. The best Nike trainers for running, for example. Like people will probably search for the best running trainers rather than the best brand insert running trainers, for example. Taking the kind of AI consumer agents point a little bit further, Norway's Opera introduced something called Browser Operator at Mobile World Congress, What is it? Essentially, it's a native AI agent that can handle browsing tasks for users. So in the demo video, the browser operator kind of takes control of the consumer's browser, and it selects and books tickets for a football match, soccer, if you're listening from the US. And after the user has set parameters related to the price they're willing to pay, where they want to sit, other kinds of details, it's able to look for the tickets that fulfill that request. And it's interesting to see how it's kind of, again, targeting that basic need for convenience and relevance. And I should say with this one that the user can kind of override it at any point. So if it starts going rogue, if it starts booking tickets that are way above your budget for some reason, you do have the control to stop it. Okay, two more innovations that take this a little bit further. So in Singapore, Mogul SG, who are a real estate portal, they have introduced something called MAIA, which is a bit of a mouthful to say, but it's an agent that streamlines home searches and schedules viewings. So it's powered by Google's Cloud Vertex. What it does is it scans thousands of property listings that are, on the market in Singapore, and, helps people find the sort of properties they are looking for. It can then also schedule those viewings. It can be integrated with WhatsApp, so it can send messages on your behalf. Now, this one is interesting because buying a home is, or can be, usually is, very complex, stressful, and very involved. Now, what we see here is not consumers, outsourcing the final purchase, buy an apartment for me, but outsourcing those fiddly, time-consuming parts like scheduling a viewing. Finally, Amazon, who recently launched Alexa Plus. So Alexa Plus is a revamped version of Alexa, which has, you probably guessed it, generative AI capabilities. So Alexa Plus, should complete tasks in the home. So for example, it can control a Ring doorbell or a Roborock vacuum cleaner. It can also make reservations via OpenTable. The reason why I just wanted to highlight this one is because it shows the range of contexts that AI agents can operate in and starts to hint that this is evolving a little bit beyond commerce. And actually, that is the next point that we kind of make in the report. AI agents are actually evolving. So at the moment, and yes, this report is very much focused on the consumer journey, but they are also evolving, to impact the whole customer journey, the whole kind of customer experience. So I'm not going to go into these in too much detail, just because I think you can definitely find them in the report, and there's kind of more information there. But I'm just going to quickly kind of mention the sort of various phases that we see consumer AI agents going through. So the first phase is assistance, AI agents that act as curators, tailoring recommendations to individual needs. And so, of course, a great example of that is the Marks & Spencer Wine Finder innovation that we looked at 2 slides ago. The second phase is autonomous purchasing. So Alexa Plus already facilitates purchases for select brands. We talked a little bit about how Opera's browser operator can book things like stadium seats for a football match. So this is, AI agents then not just curating, but then finding the thing to purchase on consumers' behalf. And obviously, this will have, big implications for loyalty. AI will always be able to find and switch to a better deal automatically, meaning, price and price elasticity is going to play a greater role. And as we already kind of touched on and talked about at the start, this will have kind of, implications, when consumers aren't just going back to the brands or the retailers that they are familiar with. Okay, phase 3. Advocacy. essentially, AI agents will then become the primary point of contact between brands and consumers. As consumers engage less with traditional retail channels, the power will shift from marketplaces to AI agents. And that will require retailers to really reassess their role and the value that they bring to the consumer relationships. And, obviously, there's been a lot of talk, well, I mean, over the last decade, really, but also particularly since the pandemic of, what's the benefit of physical stores? And we've seen this kind of evolution of the physical store into an experience center. That's probably going to continue to gain momentum as, consumers think, well, in certain circumstances, I want the AI agent to be my point of contact with a brand. In other circumstances, I want to go into the store and interact with the brand myself. So there's also kind of in parallel to AI agents, there is also something to think about around in-person engagement kind of simultaneously. So definitely all sorts of things to keep you occupied. And then, sorry, the fourth and final phase 4, is then the eventual rise of the agent-to-agent economy, where interactions between consumers and brands are handled entirely by AI on both sides. So, for example, Gemma's AI consumer agent will be talking to a brand agent because she wants to get a refund on something. She won't go to the brand and ask them for it herself. She'll send her AI agent to do it on her behalf, and the brand's AI agent will respond for them. And then, as that kind of suggests, this will bring up new things around customer service. It's going to remove humans from the loop in some cases. And again, that transformation of kind of pre-purchase discovery, post-purchase support, everything you can kind of really think of. And so this idea that consumers will have their own personal AI agent that not only recommends and purchases, but also does things for them, potentially also could safeguard personal data too. That's kind of the fourth phase of this evolution. And as I said, this isn't just impacting the retail sector. We're sort of seeing AI agents in all sort of industries, all sorts of verticals. So let's very quickly just look at a couple. Like I said, do check the report for the ones I don't mention. On the left, we have NVIDIA. They have developed a co-playable character that can interact with players. So they unveiled this at CES at the start of the year. And one of the things that they say this will do is offer much more customized gameplay. And another example in this space, Do Not Pay have a host of robot lawyers. I need to put the robot lawyers in quotation marks like that because they actually got into a little bit of hot water in the US with the FTC because they were kind of promoting a robot lawyer that actually isn't truly a robot lawyer. What these AI agents do is, well, they initially started with fighting parking tickets. So, if you park your car and you get a ticket, it can allow you to contest it. They then kind of scaled up the number of bots they have available. They can now do things like fight spam, secure refunds, help you cancel the subscription that you didn't remember you signed up for. And interestingly enough, they just the founder, Josh Bowman, just did an interview as part of an expansion to the UK, and he talks about the agent-to-agent economy, which we talked about a couple of slides ago. And he basically confirmed that point, saying that, at the start, often Do Not Pay's AI agent is talking to the brand's AI agent. And so it's just AI agents having a conversation to try and sort these things out. And, look, while we're on this topic, this really is, just the start of what AI agents can do as consumers become more comfortable outsourcing purchase decisions. They'll likely be even more open to AI consumer agents in other areas. For example, lifestyle managers. brand agents that offer healthy eating advice, for example, or go out and find the best kind of financial products to improve your financial health or your financial literacy. Tailored tastemakers that can uncover entertainment and bands and culture that you are going to be interested in before you even really know it. Or even agents that can kind of club together to negotiate cheaper purchases. So that's just a few of the kind of future expanding roles, the future scenarios. Do check the report for all 8 of them. And so really that just kind of leaves me to kind of sum up some of these key points. AI retail assistants are really sort of starting to lay the foundation for this broader agent economy. And that includes agent-to-agent interactions, visible transactions, and more. So there is certainly, lots and lots to think about. So hopefully your brain is, on fire in a good way, and it's giving you kind of lots of things to think about. Like I said, do go back to the report to kind of go through those innovations and agent roles that I didn't have a chance to kind of fully explain properly. Also, as a little bonus for making it all the way through so far, I'm excited to say that this is a little sneak peek of the next Fast Forward report. So it is almost finished. We're just putting the finishing touches on it. It should be published on Friday. This is the second report in the augmented lifestyles theme. And this time we turn our attention, our focus onto embodied AI, really examining how intelligence is expanding from screens into physical objects and environments. And so just like the first report, lots of insights, stats, innovations, thought starters. There's a very interesting section on exoskeletons and how they are supercharging the consumer experience as well. So that's just like a little sneak peek of what is coming. That's kind of all the content I have for this webinar now, but hopefully that means we have time for questions if anybody has any. So Gemma, I do believe that you have been watching the questions if they came in.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vicky. There's been a few questions that have come through already. So please also continue to type away now and submit some more as we begin to answer them. The first question is, which you did touch upon, but it'll be interesting to hear a little bit more. Beyond retail, what other industries will consumer agents impact next? So really, actually, where do you think, obviously, you showed some other expectation transfers already, but where do you think this is going to be the next bigger industry that this will start to kind of explode in?
Yeah, great question. On the whole, I think any industry where there is a lot of steps and there is a lot of processes and there is a lot of, to use a very British word, faffing, is really ripe for consumer AI agent disruption. So for example, I saw that, and we didn't include it in the report, but Capital One have launched an AI agent that can help people when they're trying to buy a car. Obviously, buying a car, I mean, I don't want to compare it to buying a house. It's not quite as stressful, but again, there are so many options open to you, so many things to consider, make, model, price, mileage, color, everything like that. So they have launched an AI agent that is very similar to the Mogul one from Singapore, actually, that can kind of help you find a car that matches your specifications. So yeah, industries that have like quite complex steps are definitely kind of ripe for disruption. Maybe industries where consumers perceive there to be greater risk. So, for example, financial services, although I did just give an example of Capital One, who are a financial services brand, but they are kind of trying to sell their car insurance product through that other AI agent. Yeah, where there's greater risk, like financial services, for example, I feel like there might be greater hesitancy. Although at the same time, it's also quite difficult to predict because I was recently reading a survey from Salesforce, which said that people are looking for financial service agents. They're just a little bit wary of, what happens with the information. So yeah. So yeah, that's kind of my answer. Like any industry that is kind of complex and has multifaceted kind of consumer experience steps is definitely ripe for disruption.
Lovely, thank you so much. Next question, very simple. Why have you picked the topic for the next Fast Forward edition?
For the next one,
Yeah, for the next one.
for the next one. Um, so we wanted to kind of explore this theme of augmented lifestyles. Obviously, this time we very much focused on consumer AI agents, which is a very kind of digital experience. We wanted to kind of think a little bit more about how AI is impacting like the whole kind of consumer lifestyle, basically. And so that was one of the reasons why we chose it. And then a couple of other reasons. There was also a lot of talk about kind of embodied AI at CES. And the NVIDIA CEO at either the end of last year or the start of this year talked about how kind of what he calls, physical AI is like the next big opportunity in AI. And so we thought it was definitely ripe for a report.
Cool. Thank you very much. Another question that's come through, it says, what if AI simply doesn't have the best interest of the consumer at heart and big retailers pay for placement like advertising today?
Yes, yeah. And something I didn't mention when we talked about this, but I think there's a link to it in the report, is obviously one of the companies that is developing kind of AI shopping recommendations is Perplexity. And last year, I mean, I don't know how he got away with admitting this, but the Perplexity CEO, they kind of admitted that they actually don't always know like how it comes up with the recommendations it does. It's like a bit of a black box. So definitely, the tech companies themselves are not always super aware of, what is driving these recommendation engines. So that's definitely like something to think about. And then yes, obviously, the next natural step is brands pay to have their product kind of surfaced to the top of the recommendations. I think, we're already used to that. If you search on Google, old school, you know that, you get kind of paid placements. I would imagine that it will be kind of communicated to the consumer that, these are sponsored links. So you can make the judgment as to whether that is something that has been put there because it is genuinely the best or it's because it's been paid to be the best. So that's definitely going to happen. And obviously, consumers are now quite savvy online shoppers. So, hopefully that is something that they will be aware of. But I think they won't be happy if it seems like brands are kind of using this tech kind of nefariously and sort of trying to serve them something that isn't in their best interest. So as with so many of these questions when it comes to kind of privacy, I definitely think, transparency and openness is like the way to go.
Thank you very much. And next question that's just come through is, what would your suggestion be to kind of start acting on this report and kind of really taking action?
Very good question. Well, you can definitely keep an eye on, other innovations that we keep spotting in this space. You can use the innovations expert in the innovation database to help you kind of find more consumer agents so you can kind of keep on top of what is happening and what is changing. And then definitely just start thinking about what points in the customer journey, where would an AI agent make sense? What kinds of things do your consumers want to outsource? What are those fiddly faffy bits? and, start kind of thinking about the steps that happen there and the kind of data that you would need to kind of provide answers to those questions.
Thank you. Well, that's actually all the questions that have come through so far now.
Perfect.
So we're all good to go.
Cool. Well, I guess that means we just need to say thank you so much to everyone for joining, for listening in, for asking such great questions, and to my co-host Gemma, of course. And then just one last thing to say is don't forget to download Fast Forward issue 1 or look out for issue 2, which is coming on Friday. So really great to see you all. Thank you for joining, and until next time.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.